Welcome, everybody. I'm delighted to be here today doing the brand realization panel, and we're going to be looking at the power of play, which is super interesting, I think, at the moment. I've got two fantastic panelists here. We've got Renae Brown, who's Associate Manager, Location-Based Entertainment, EMEA Hasbro, and Tom Lionetti-Maguire, who's founder and CEO of Little Lion Entertainment. So welcome, both of you. I'm going to ask you both just to introduce yourselves a little bit and talk about what you're working on. So if we could start with Renae, that would be fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm Renae, and I work on the commercial side of the Global Experiences team at Hasbro, with a focus on our permanent location-based entertainment projects in the EMEA region. So things like theme parks, hotels, FECs, F&B, experiential retail, and I also look after our arcade game licensing globally. I've been at Hasbro for just over 3 years now, and I genuinely love the brands and the partners that I get to work with. Brands such as Peppa Pig, Transformers, Nerf, Play-Doh, Monopoly, Cluedo, Furby, and hundreds more. And funnily enough, I accidentally got Furby's banned from my classroom in grade 4 because the one I took for show and tell decided to interrupt my teacher's story time by saying, boring, to which the whole class was in hysterics, and she lost complete control of the classroom. So to now be working on Furby, as well as many other brands I grew up loving as an adult, is really sweet. There's probably quite a lot of LBE stuff in development that I can't talk about, but the next big opening that we've got for EMEA specifically is our first ever Peppa Pig immersive experience, Peppa's Surprise Party, which will be opening at the Metro Centre in Gateshead in March with our partners Immersive Everywhere. We opened the retail store back in November, and we had queues all day long. So the locals are already responding really well to that, and we can't wait to see how they respond to the experience.
Wonderful. That's super exciting, isn't it? And Tom, how about you?
Completely accidentally with the Furby, Renae, I'm sure. You hadn't been coaching him for weeks.
I might have been.
That sounds too good to be true. My name's Tom. I'm the CEO of Little Lion Entertainment. So we're in this still young industry of immersive and LBE. We're one of the older heads now. We've been going for about 11 years. And we have two arms to our business. One that we call immersive, that includes the Crystal Maze live experiences, which have been going for 10 years now, and the Tomb Raider experience, which is under the sort of immersive arm of what we do. Those larger footprint experiences that are actor-led across multiple different worlds. And the other arm of our business is what we call live video games. So the principal concept for that is an arcade arena. An arcade arena is a giant video game bot in which you can put in any number of video games. And we have arcade arenas in Manchester, Dubai, and Riyadh. And we have 3 games currently. So Chaos Carts, Pac-Man, and the newest game that we've just announced, Alien Invasion. And we've got a pipeline of amazing video games coming through on that side of the business. So yeah, that's kind of what we do.
Very exciting. I think really interesting things that you're doing, Tom, as well. I think it's really, really exciting to watch. Great. So we'll kick off. So I wanted to kind of like talk a little bit about bringing games to life, and starting with Renae. I know it's slightly outside of your area, but I was looking at, obviously got Monopoly and Cluedo, but Hasbro's just brought to life Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, which is such an iconic game, tabletop role playing, been going for 50 years. Like, people play this for days and days, and it's been so influential in the kind of development of video games altogether. and people just love it. So I just wondered, how on earth do you like take a game like that that's so unruly and nebulous and player led and distill it into a sort of an LBE?
Yeah, I mean, all excellent points. I would say D&D is probably one of our most intimidating IPs to try and bring to life, precisely because it's so open-ended. And the joy of D&D comes from freedom, imagination, and players owning their story. So, whenever we develop a new LBE experience with our partners, we start by looking at the core fundamentals of how it's traditionally played at home. And then we ask, how do we bring those fundamentals to life in a way that can't be replicated at home? And for D&D, that meant focusing on how it feels to play, which can be collaborative, unpredictable, sometimes chaotic, and deeply personal to the player. So for the immersive quest experience in particular, that led the team to design a mix of linear as well as open world moments instead of a completely linear path, which was quite tricky. But I think what differentiates playing D&D at home to the experience is the theatrical scale. In particular, the set pieces are so impressive, the physicality and the freedom for the players to create their own destiny. So the characters get to decide their own character, which games they want to play, how to earn points, whether they want to work solo or as part of a team, and all of that within a structure that works operationally and remains accessible to non-D&D fans too.
Yeah, that's sorry. I was going to say that was
no, you're fine.
Yeah. I mean, were you worried about the reception of it from people? Because people just love it, don't they? They're really super into it.
Yeah, the fans are so protective of the brand, and quite right. We love that. I wouldn't say we were worried. I think what really helped is that we were working with a partner, Vibrant, who were already huge fans of D&D. So they already had a deep understanding of the brand and a genuine desire to create something special for the community.
Wonderful. Yeah, I can't wait to try it. I think it's fascinating. I think it's gonna be really interesting.
I can't wait to try it either.
Yeah. And Tom, I wanted what you thought about this as well, because you've adapted some iconic games from like Tomb Raider and now also then Pac-Man, which are kind of different ends of the beast, really, aren't they? But both there's love and nostalgia for both of them. And how do you take a game like that and again distill what it means to play it, but then put that and make it a unique experience for people?
Yeah, it's a good question. It does depend on the game and the world, and as Renae says, it's got to start from a place of you've got to understand that these games, these brands, they're hallowed ground for many. So you've got to sort of come in with a love and respect for it to begin with. Tomb Raider was interesting because it's and we've developed concepts for other massive IPs and huge world IPs as well. That's a different challenge because from our perspective, you've almost got to find a niche. You've got to find a section of that world and really deliver that. I think there can be a danger of spreading yourself too thin with these massive open worlds. I mean, like, imagine trying to sort of create Fortnite, short of buying a whole bloody island, like you're not going to be able to do it. So I think with those enormous worlds, you've got to find a parcel of it that you can really sort of deliver and still inculcate as many of the sort of motifs as you can from the world. But it's a case of actually less is more, I think, with the big worlds. With Pac-Man, it was a different story because it's one of the oldest video games going. It's probably one of the most famous, but the gameplay is relatively set. The challenge with that was, how do you blow it up and bring it into the real world? And how do you keep that super engaging, and how do you build? And so what we were able to do with our partners at Bandai Namco was we were actually able to build in new levels, and we were able to really ramp up the difficulty. So by the time you get to level 10, there's 6 ghosts and it's absolute chaos, and it's actually genuinely like terrifying, and it's mad. But you need that, following the sort of video game trajectory, right? You need that build. So yeah, different challenges depending on the worlds that you're looking at, right? But that's what we found.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're talking about trying to find the kind of essence of the game, but then on the feeling of playing it, isn't it? But then also deliver something that's unique in the kind of real world that you can't get from playing.
Yeah, and actually, to simplify the answer, the bottom line that we look for in everything that we do is like, where's the fun? Where's the fun heart of this? Like, you've got to be having fun. We're I think I said on a panel recently that like Punch Drunk are like the Beatles of immersive, and we're like the Spice Girls, and I quite like that. I'm gonna stick with that. We are the Spice Girls, and everything that we do is big and silly and fun, and that's the heart of it. That's kind of our ethos, and look, it's worked for us, and hopefully it will continue to work. But yeah, I like that. I think in this world, some shared moments, some physically shared moments with friends and family, and something that doesn't take itself too seriously and is a bit silly. I think there's a real need for it. There's a real space for it. So that's our starting point: is how do we get a team of people in a space, and how can they have fun?
Lovely. Yeah, I'm trying to think of a Spice Girls pun, but one will come to me. Want to come to me later. Which Spice Girl are you then, Tom? Are you not?
I'm posh, obviously.
Oh, okay.
That was so quick.
That was too quick, I think, actually. So on just going on from that as well then. So we talked a little bit about difficulty levels, but that's something else that interests me very much. So how do you take a game and make it fun for everybody when not everybody is kind of as able or familiar with the brand? How do you create an experience that's good for a diverse audience? So maybe Renae, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I think you can make it feel authentic and challenging in different ways. So that could be through the onboarding, storytelling, and allowing success in different ways that's not just skill. I also think there's a sweet spot where if you can design a core mechanic that anyone can understand in seconds, but allow additional depth for those fans who want to go deeper, then that's brilliant. I think social play is also critical. So when you're playing as a group, failure becomes part of the fun. It's not intimidating. And I think any failure should be playful instead of punishing. The perfect example of this is when you get sent to real life Monopoly jail at Monopoly life size. Yes, it's technically a failure, but they've turned it into a fun challenge room that some players actually try to visit because it's such an iconic part of the game. And I think with our Hasbro gaming brands in particular, we're quite lucky because they've got such a heritage and they've been around for so long that most households own or have owned one or more of our games at some point in their lives. So when they're coming into a live experience, they have some initial understanding of what the gameplay might be. So then our job is to add those surprise and delight elements on top. And going back to my point earlier, it's adding those things that you can't do when playing it at home. And I think we also need to be really careful because a lot of our brands have multi-generational appeal too. So when we're looking at difficulty and levels, they always need to be accessible.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, I think everybody's played Monopoly, haven't they? I think it's so amazing to work with those kind of brands and bring them to life.
Absolutely. And I think, if you're getting sent to jail when you're playing at home, that might be the board flipping moment. But when you're playing it at Monopoly life size, some people celebrate it. So That's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think it's getting back to what Tom said about making it fun, isn't it? I guess all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Tom, how about you? What's your kind of thought on that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I mean, we've found, particularly with the sort of live video game sort of worlds, you've just got to try again, because in the physical immersive experiences, because a lot of us come from like a sort of theatre world, there's more of a sort of framework, there's more of a previous sort of reference point. With live video games, because it's so new and it's so avant-garde, it is difficult. And so what we've found in the sort of game development is you just got to sort of do pilots as early as possible. You've got to sort of iteratively test as early as possible. So with Pac-Man was a great example, right? Because Pac-Man can cater for, you know, every sort of kind of accessible guests, and you get, you know, you can have a 95-year-old playing it, and you can also have a professional footballer playing it, but they're going to play it in very, very different ways. And so having something that you can regulate for all of those guests is really important, and having an ability to almost self-regulate within the game is also quite important, and we've been able to do that. So we can ramp up difficulties during the game, and we can sort of slow a game down or speed a game up. But the only way to learn how to do that is by doing it. So you kind of got to throw yourself in there and then get the feedback, get the data from people. So it's a little bit scary because you've kind of just got to jump in the pool, right? But it's fun as well. It is fun. That's one of the sort of really fun things of doing this job.
Really interesting. So with Pac-Man, you're actually changing the difficulty as people are playing then? Is it like feedback on it?
Well, it's automated. It's so it's almost like if you're doing too well, the software knows that, like, right, okay, let's take these guys down a peg or two.
That's so clever.
That's clever.
And it also means that you can be winning like the whole game, and then you can lose, and it creates for some sort of interesting dynamics. And you know, and the next games will be different again. But yeah, the sort of the core ethos is we try and emulate from, we try and take from the well-trodden world of video games themselves, where there are sort of cumulative gains, there are sort of minor, you know, failures, and then you sort of come back to your thread, and we try as much as possible to emulate the emotion of playing a video game from start to finish.
Yeah, well, really interesting. I think Pac-Man looks a bit too terrifying for me to play. I'm not sure about that.
I'm keen. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's loads of new levels as well, which is sort of completely different. So there's loads of stuff in there.
Cool. Okay. So I guess the thing that we all want with these kind of experiences is replayability and to get repeat guests. So how do you encourage people to come and play again? And is there any interaction with guests between the experiences? Do you keep in touch with them? What tricks have you got to get people to come back? So I don't know, Renae, have you got, I'm sure Hasbro does loads of interesting stuff.
Yeah, so I think it's our partners that are mainly interacting with consumers between visits, and they tend to do that through newsletters and social media. But I think what really drives repeat visitation is meaningful choices, variation and evolution of experiences. I think where consumers can genuinely affect the outcome of something that they're doing, they will want to come back and try it again and again. And sort of like what Tom was saying with Pac-Man, if you know that gameplay is going to change depending on how you're performing, that is going to, you know, the very competitive people are going to want to come back and try again and again. And I think that's really, really cool. Particularly for Hasbro experiences on the variation side, that could be things like new chapters, new games, different challenges, levels, etc. Using Monopoly Life Size as the example again, at the London site, we've got 4 boards that people can play. So they've got Monopoly Luxury, Classic, City, Own It All, and each have their own unique challenge rooms and theming. And I think experiences can't stay stagnant. They need the ability to refresh with things like seasonal overlays, narrative updates, and new characters. Not specifically game related, but our Peppa Pig afternoon tea bus adds a festive menu at Christmas to change things up, and our Peppa theme parks add Christmas costumes to the characters, so that meet and greets at different times throughout the year can be unique. And we also had a huge narrative update with Peppa Pig last year, welcoming a baby sister to the family, which meant that all of our experiences had something new to implement and celebrate.
That was huge news, wasn't it? I remember, I think our news item on that was one of our most read of the year, actually.
It was probably one of the most bizarre things I've ever worked on. Yeah, I was responsible for the gender reveal at Battersea Power Station, which is award-winning now. So yeah, that was something quite special, I think.
That's really fun. So Tom, how about you? How do you get repeat visitors?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with Renae. There's three elements, right? So there's the marketing and you know how you do that and how you sort of get people back that way. There's the human element, which is, you know, a lot of our experiences use actors, and a lot of the time you come back with a different set of people. So, you know, family, friends, office. So the human element is massive, because actually, depending on who you're with and who your actor is, you can have a totally different experience. But the main thing, evidently, as Renae says, is the product, and probably the most interesting. So from the very start, all of our experiences have been built to be renewable. So with the Crystal Maze, we can change the zone, we can change all the games, and effectively you've got a completely brand new experience. The arcade arena takes that to the nth degree. The arcade arena is a giant video game box, and effectively where we're getting to when we have 30 arcade arenas and 20 different games is it's effectively going to be a hybrid sort of cinema type model. So you can go to Arcade Arena Los Angeles and you can go to Arcade Arena London, and they have 5 completely different games playing with different seasons of levels. And then the sort of matrix of you know what you can do is incredibly interesting, actually. So that's where we're sort of going with it. And look, I think I also think not just is it interesting in terms of repeatability. I think this is the sort of future of LBE. I think it's the sort of future of entertainment, is these multi-purpose type sort of venues.
Yeah, wonderful, with changing content and everything. I think it's really interesting. Sure. So I was going to ask you just a really easy question. What's the secret to making the experience work? So easy. So Tom, I think I must confess that our team played Crystal Maze just before Christmas, and we had a really, really good time. And I don't think I know it builds on nostalgia, but I don't think it's anything to do with nostalgia. I think it's just really a really good experience, and the actor was great. Everybody got involved. Everybody achieved something. It was really fun. So I know Crystal Maze is like award-winning, long-lasting. So what's the secret to creating something like that? What makes it work?
It's no secret. It's easy. It's just pop them up and off they go. I don't know. Like the Crystal Maze is just something else. It's, you know, it's been a barnstormer from day one. It's sold out for 18 months upon opening, and it's still just crazy. I mean, you know, and it's going to be our Les Mis. It's going to run for 50 years. And there is something just universal and timeless about it simultaneously, which I've never quite put my finger on exactly. My best guess is that there is something for everyone, and the quality and the production and the level of creativity is very, very high, and that just sort of shines through. But it is difficult. It is, you know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult from umpteen sort of facets as a, you know, as an owner and operator of these attractions. And I said at another sort of panel discussion the other day that immersive LBE, or this kind of sort of midway strata of LBE is kind of in its teenage years now. It was 15 years ago, it was very, very young. Now it's kind of maturing, but it's still getting there. It's not as grown up as the theme park world, for example. And that means there has been a bit of a sort of gold rush into it. And that does mean that you get, you know, some slightly less scrupulous operators, and they find very, very quickly that it's not easy. And that's why you have some things pop up and then they close 3 months later, and that's not amazing for the consumer, because it can be difficult to sort of gauge what's legitimate and what isn't. And this is in no means a challenge to Renae, but I think, you know, across the world of IP owners, I think some new entrants into the world think that you can just slap an IP onto a thing and then make it an experience, and that's absolutely not the case. And you know, it's absolutely not the case with us, and it's absolutely not the case with the fantastic guys that Renae works with. But coming right back to the start, it has got to come from a place of care, of love of the brand, of understanding, then the creativity, then just good operations, and you know, and then all the rest of it. So yeah, it's not easy. I take it back.
Yeah, and I think this is like partly the reason I want to do this session as well. I think I've seen quite a lot of people leaping on video games, like, oh, great, let's have a video game exhibition, let's do an experience. And it's all about the kind of like, you know, like a set and theming, and not about actually playing the game and what it feels like to play the game and the actual experience of playing a game, you know. So that's why I think it's really interesting to kind of learn a bit more about that and what you guys do really well as well. So Renae, Hasbro, it's really hard to ask you questions because you've got so many brands and so many experiences and partnerships. And I know you're looking at different kind of partnerships as well, but I'm quoting you back to yourself. You've said that concepts don't always work immediately. So could you tell us about any projects that surprised you and changes you've had to make, and some sort of key lessons from that?
Yeah, so I think without getting too project specific and hurting anyone's feelings, anytime we open a new experience with our partners, it's really just the beginning, and we're constantly assessing and adjusting as we go in real time. And I think the best experiences, also following on from what Tom was just saying, are the ones where you've got brand authenticity, operational reality, and guest enjoyment all in balance. If one of those is out of sync, then the experience is going to struggle. You know, we've had projects that have opened where we've put a lot of time and focus on what we thought was going to be the hero element, and actually once we opened, something else resonated far more strongly. And I think it's okay to pivot based on feedback once experiences are open as well. And also, sometimes fixing doesn't mean throwing more money at it and adding more. It can be simplifying and clarifying as well. A really niche example, but our Peppa Pig and Transformers stores at Battersea Power Station both opened with these wonderful green screen photo areas for customers to choose their backgrounds, characters, etc. But it meant that a real life human was taking the photo of them, which was a barrier to entry, and it was operationally heavy. They've since switched to classic style photo booths instead, and the uplift in photo sales is huge. So that's a really niche example. And then we've also had experiences open where they might start with timed entry tickets, but then quickly realize a paid to play model might suit that location and venue better. So that's why, you know, we continually work with our partners long after opening to keep reviewing, testing and refining the concepts to make sure that they do have longevity and are giving fans the best experience possible. So going back to your original question, I think the secret sauce for us is being open to feedback and being adaptable.
Yeah, and I guess keeping in touch. It's not just kind of doing the experience and leaving it.
Yeah, we don't just hand the rights over and say go for it. We basically get married to our partners, and we're we're in it with them to the very end.
That's nice. Okay.
So I wondered. That's a lot of marriages.
Yeah.
We are. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't have said marriage.
You've got a lot love to give.
Yeah. You've got a lot of anniversaries.
Yeah. So just moving on to sort of the biggest challenges that you're facing then. So if you could talk a bit about what maybe your biggest challenge is, and then also, because this is like our sort of innovation festival, I don't know if there's anything that you think, oh, I wish somebody would just invent this and it would make my life easier. So I don't know if you could talk about that a little bit, maybe Renae first. What challenges do you have? What's your biggest one?
Yeah, so I think for us, some of the challenges that we face sometimes are finding the right partners to work with. Sort of, again, following on from what Tom was saying, there are lots of operators out there, and we like to find that we're working with the right ones. I think anyone who is trying to rush to open something is a bit of a red flag, and anyone who's trying to brand slap our brands, we just wouldn't go down that path. So I think that can be a challenge. And then once we have those partners, a challenge is finding the right locations to open new experiences in. I think real estate can be hugely challenging. And then from a tech perspective, personalization and scoring are big areas of focus for us. So I think any tools that can help track progress, choices, and identity across visits without adding complexity to the operations or friction to the guest journey would be really interesting to explore. And I think on the personalization side, we're constantly looking at how we can improve our merchandise offering in the gift stores, for example. So yeah, anything on those two would be interesting to talk about.
Super. Thank you. That's really, really interesting answer. Thank you. And Tom, how about you?
Yeah, totally echo what Renae said to begin with. Good partners, Renae, we're right here. This is cool. Real estate in every country in the world, I utterly agree. It's as bad, equally bad in every country that we've ever been to. My big one, and it's perhaps boring and unpopular, but it's the British government is our biggest challenge. You know, we're owners and operators of 7 venues, and most of them are in the UK. And you know, as owners, we pay taxes 15 odd times. VAT is 20%. Business rates are 15 to 20%. So that's a third of your revenue evaporated before you've even done a single thing, before you've hired a single person. And furthermore, what we do in LBE isn't recognized, even though it's a $1 billion industry and is only growing. We're not recognized. We don't get any support. You know, whereas theatre does, you know, restaurants and hospitality do, cinema does, film does, and what we do purely out of you know, ignorance, purely out of not knowing what it is that we do. We're, you know, we're denigrated, and life is made even more difficult for us. And yet, you know, the great operators are still doing fantastic things and still have venues in the West End, and are paying extortionate rents and extortionate taxes. And it's, you know, it's a bit of a, it's perhaps a bit of a sort of gripey topic and a boring topic for something as interesting as an innovation talk, but that is my honest answer.
Yeah, I think that's a particular issue with the UK, and it's sad given that London's such a hub for immersive, isn't it? I think known worldwide.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah.
and you know, the greatest things, and we can all proudly say this, the greatest things in immersive and LBE have come out of London in the last 20 years. Truly, you know, other than Team Lab from Tokyo, everything else that is, you know, 5-star has come out of London. We've got as preeminent an industry as we do in theatre and film, and yet it's, you know, it's completely ignored, and that's just bonkers.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything on the tech side of things? Any kind of like tech or innovations you'd like, Tom? Following on from personalization.
Not really. All the crazy things that we come up with, we go to China and they build it for us. So it's actually fine.
Thank you for that.
Again, it's true. No, but I think the interesting thing in that is we've definitely seen it, and with partners in Japan and in China, actually, I think it's quite interesting that some of the craziest and weirdest innovations in tech hardware have come from the creative industries going, hey, could we do that? And could we make that? And could we project that onto smoke? Or
Yeah.
and I just think that the interaction of those brains, the creative brains from theatre makers in London and the technical brains of, you know, engineers in Tokyo sort of coming together, because they never would have imagined that they need to make a projector in that way.
Yeah.
So that's more my point, is that I think yeah, pretty much anything that you can dream up these days can sort of be made.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting. I've been going through the awards this year, all the entries, and there's some really interesting tech and theatre things going on. Actually, some quite niche things, but worth having a look at. There's a
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen. There's a quicksand disappearing kind of tool and things where you can sink through quicksand, and there's like quite a few like things you think, oh, I'd never thought of doing that. So yeah. Interesting.
That's incredible. That sounds like something I would love, and our insurers would absolutely hate.
Yeah.
We're going to make guests disappear.
Maybe not guests.
Brilliant.
Okay, cool. So the last question then. So I was going to say how amazing it is we're here together, because I remember pre-pandemic, I think it was, like, everyone was talking about at-home entertainment being so good that nobody's going to go out anymore, and you know, particularly video games. And here we are talking about bringing games into LBE, which is amazing, and it's a real success story, I think. So Tom, I know, just going back to talking about arcade arenas, and you're expanding there with some new games. You're in Dubai now as well, and you talk about new games being out of this world. Can you tell us what your strategy is, what you're doing, and if you can tell us what you've got planned, that would be great.
What can I say without getting into trouble? I'm always getting into trouble.
Just say it and it'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
This is where Tom has tech troubles.
Getting in trouble because of Rachel. That's why. So I can say that we've got a brand new arcade arena coming to London very, very soon, in the next few months, which is super exciting. And we've got 3 new games in development. Game 3 is, as I said earlier, is called Alien Invasion. So Alien Invasion is laser tag, but the technology has sort of been taken like 10x into the future, and then we set that in a full sci-fi world, so in a completely digitally projected spacescape, and then if that wasn't enough, you are then pursued and you shoot and are shot by real life drones. So it's completely insane.
Wow.
And there is definitely nothing like this in the world. And then game 4 is probably one of the biggest video game IPs of all time, which is really exciting as well, and a little bit terrifying, actually. But that's what I think is super interesting about what we're doing, and is super interesting about the way that the leisure industry is going. I think to have you know, these video game boxes on an arena scale, you know, the size of a large football pitch, and to be able to be catapulted into that world and play 3, 4, 5 different video games in a day. I can't think of anyone else that's doing anything like that. And you know, I might be biased, but I think that's really cool.
Yeah, really, really cool. And it's going well for you as well, and the demand is there. This is like where things are going then.
Yeah. I mean, the arcade arenas are flying. We can't build them fast enough, to be honest. And because they are, you know, crystal mazes are huge endeavors and you know, massive capexes. So we do build less of them. We are building a crystal maze flagship here in Dubai, which is really exciting. But yeah, crystal mazes are sort of more one every year, one every 2 years. The arcade arenas, we can build a lot of them and hopefully get into sort of more cities and get more games, so that more people can experience these things. Because coming back somewhat to what we were saying earlier, I do think London and the UK is really ahead of the curve with a lot of this stuff. I don't know if you agree, Renae, but even in the US, where ostensibly they had a jump on us with theme parks and things, now I feel they're somewhat sort of behind the curve. You've got Meow Wolf that are super interesting, and some other things in Vegas like starting to get there, but in 50 of the other states it's still bowling, and you know, it's mad.
Yeah, I think the UK is definitely a good market to test new immersive and in particular competitive socializing concepts.
Yeah, fantastic. So Renae, you've got so many interesting IPs and partnerships with all kinds of attractions. So you're going into China with Peppa Pig, and then there's a water park development, game room at American Dream. So it's a big question, but so what trends are you seeing, and how is this shaping the strategy for IP in terms of both your channels and geography?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to come with a bit of a biased answer, but I think IP is obviously becoming ever more important in the space, along with adaptable formats. IP, you know, as the global experience economy grows, IP is important because it sets all the experiences apart from one another, and it signals to the consumers that the experience is of a certain quality, hopefully. Format-wise, not every market wants or needs a theme park, so there's growing demand for flexible, modular experiences that can scale across geographies and adapt to local audiences. And then in terms of markets, geographically, growth markets like Asia and the Middle East continue to be exciting for us, especially for our character and gaming brands. But I think we've also got a lot of white space in Europe. And I think ultimately what's consistent everywhere is the desire for shared social experiences that bring people together in real life.
Wonderful. Yeah, really exciting times. Is there any end to Peppa Pig's world domination, do you think?
Is there a limit, did you say?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so.
It's crazy. Well, both of you, it's been really lovely to talk to you. Thanks so much. Really, really, really interesting answers and really interesting work that you're doing. It's been fantastic. So everyone else, stay tuned, because we're going to find out the winners of the brand realization category. And thank you again. Thanks, Renae, and thanks, Tom. Lovely to speak to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Renae.
Bye.
And now the winners of the Blue Loop Innovation Awards 2025 Brand Realization category. Third place, John Wick Experience Las Vegas from Lionsgate. Second place, Grease, the immersive movie musical from Secret Cinema. First place, Arcade Arena Manchester Pac-Man live experience from Little Lion Entertainment. Congratulations to all of the winners.